All right, live from Dogleg Brewery in Fort Worth, Texas, it's time for You Can't Brew That on Television. Now, here are your hosts, Brewmeisters Kyle and Ryan, Cuban facial structure. Hey.
I was hoping you remembered that.
What's going on, Internet? Welcome to an exciting episode, a cidery shirt-matching episode of You Can't Brew That on Television. We are your hosts. I am the Reverend Ryan...
Cuban facial
structure Bono.
Hey, you got a lot of names, man.
Yeah, actually, I think we added Saint last time. I
forgot.
Saint. I am Saint Reverend Ryan Facial Structure Bono Haig.
And I'm Kyle. So thanks for joining us, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. It's a lot of fun so far. We're wearing matching shirts.
Yes, if you haven't noticed.
By accident. There was no memo sent out.
No. I actually went through about 8 different beer shirts and said, I'm going to wear last year's Iron Mash tonight, and put it on, and so did Bono. Well,
so, that's lame. So from now on, I will only wear shirts that I know my esteemed co-host does not have. I'm going to make a note of that right now. And
Teddy, can you get with me and figure out which shirts he has?
All right, okay, great. Good work. Welcome to a cider episode, everyone. Cider has been gaining popularity in the United States steadily over the last few years.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I think that it is something Dogleg Brewery has to acknowledge. A studio audience informed me that I was clicking my pen too much. It is sort of a nervous fidget of mine.
Yes.
So, here we are.
Now you're snapping.
Now I'm snapping. So,
here, take this one. It doesn't make any noise.
I can make it make noise. Watch this. So we're gonna be tasting crisp and hard cider tonight. And then what are we gonna be doing?
Oh, then we're gonna be talking about cider.
Awesome.
We're gonna be talking about some local news. Got some fun stuff that's going on.
Some cider trivia. We're gonna talk about cider judging. It's gonna be a very exciting evening.
Yeah, we've actually got like printed out little.
Yeah, we actually went.
We're gonna judge a cider.
We've talked in the past a lot about judging beer.
Right.
And cider judging, it does have some slight differences that we're going to take a look at, and we're going to be sort of going through this on the spot because we didn't really get a chance to.
No, we didn't practice this. So you guys are going to bear with us while we know what cider judging.
Yeah, so we know what beer judging is.
Right.
Actually, I see one huge difference.
Oh, I see that too. It says cider.
Yeah, it says cider right there at the top.
Yeah.
All right, so let's pour some beer.
All right,
cider. Let's pour some cider.
Let's do it.
You have your opener?
I did. Where did it go?
Are you kidding me? It's not happening.
Okay, that's not going to work. I used to know how to do that.
Alright, while Kyle is looking for the bottle opener that we somehow misplaced, I'm going to talk a little bit about something you're going to notice, and that is that we're going to be pouring our cider this evening over ice. That's something we didn't really know about until we started looking into the Crispin deal. Crispin is pretty adamant that their cider be poured over ice, so we're going to see what that adds to the situation. Not really something you do with beer a whole lot, as Kyle is coming back into the room with our bottle opener.
It turned out the bottle was open the whole time.
An open bottle. The bottle was... Oh, yeah, well, it was open the whole time, wasn't it? Because it's a twist-off bottle, for those of you who can't see this at home.
Wow.
So... So, first thing I'm noticing, we're starting tonight with just the base Crispin cider. And this is just their straight up and down cider. I imagine there's going to be some sugar added to the fermentation.
Thank you, sir.
Do we have an alcohol percentage on this? It's 5% alcohol by volume. And which tells me that there's nothing in this but apples. This is going to be exclusively apple cider.
It's, that's the one thing you notice anytime you brew anything with apples or a fruit, it gets much drier because the sugars that are in fruits, are much simpler sugars, so a lot of them break down.
Right.
And that's one of the things you notice in here. It's just like a big dry note as opposed to a sweet note sometimes that you get from grains.
Yeah, and some of your ciders are going to be sweet rather than dry. It's something we'll take a look at here in a little bit. But when you see that it's 5% alcohol... This
is kind of mixed. This is in the taste. I would say, like, I get a little bit of dryness in the back note, but overall, it's a generally sweet drink.
Yeah.
That's not bad at all.
It's a generally sweet drink. It's definitely not. There's some overly sweet ciders out there that we'll not mention by name because they're ridiculously sweet. But this is definitely not one of them.
Right.
And it's not horribly dry either. Like you drink a Strongbow and it's got a nice, like, really serious dry finish to it, and it's just not there with this.
No?
It's a really, really nice, even mixture.
So, we did this over ice because the bottle told us to.
Yeah, I'm happy with the results. I think
not
it's
bad.
gone well.
Not bad at all. I mean, again, not my flavor, but if I ordered a drink at a place and I wasn't given the choice to pick out fancy beers like I normally like to pick out, I would not send this back, and I would probably order another one.
Yeah, this is good stuff. Rich, while we're enjoying this, how about you bust out some trivia for us?
Ready for some trivia action? All right,
Yeah,
Kyle. This one's for you and anyone listening along. The trivia tonight: what country can claim the highest per capita consumption of cider? Is the question.
What country can claim the highest per capita consumption of cider? Well,
I'll tell you this: it's not the country where cider where cider originated.
Okay.
So, if you know where cider originated, then that'll help you. But if not, I'm just chatting.
So
yeah, that should narrow it down for him.
Is, I'm going to go with something. You know what? I'm going to go off the cuff. I'm just feeling a Canada.
Okay.
I was going to say Canada. I think
Do we want to give the audience some time to internet cheat this, or do we want to jump straight?
Which
into
means I'm not
answer?
right, by the way.
Okay.
Not necessarily.
Wrong.
Actually, yeah, I guess it does mean you're not right.
Because otherwise, we would have told you. That
There's
I was
usually more
right.
fanfare
But
for a correct
these
answer.
things, I gleaned.
Well, let's start at the beginning. Cider is believed to have originated as a drink, a hard alcoholic drink in France, where they love their apples and they love alcohol. And it was introduced as just sort of a cheaper, lighter wine. Lots of fruits in France, and they're really into fruits. So, cider really originated there in France, but the people that took to it the most you were kind of onto something because you went with Canada, which is one of the places that the Brits sowed their dirty seeds. But the Brits have the highest per capita consumption of cider, and it's something that they've always been all about over there in the UK.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too, because I thought for sure I thought beer was king there.
I figured, for some reason I had one of those, it's got to be one of the beer is king countries. Like, I just got this feeling, and so I was thinking Canada, UK, or Germany, and I just had this inkling towards Canada. I went Canada, and I was wrong. I was wrong. It needs to be on your website.
It does need to be on my website, I think. So, really quick before we get a little bit more into the cider history and tasting and things of this nature, let's talk really quick about some cider news we've got going on here. Well, do you want to talk about that, or do you want me to cover it?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Crispin, who is the maker of the cider we're drinking this evening, is going to be at the Fall Festival this Saturday at the Gingerman in Dallas, and they're going to be unveiling a cask of their Jack Daniel's aged whiskey barrel cider, which is something I'm personally looking forward to if I can make it out. Did you just get a text message?
I did, and Droid told you so. That's how he knew.
Droid
said
so.
His name. Droid often talks in the third person when he gets a text message.
Yeah, so for everybody in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they're going to have a lot of really good beers there, too, and it's not just going to be cider. So
Gingerman, they've got one in Dallas and one in Fort Worth as far as our local area. I know there's one in Houston, and
Austin has one.
Austin has one as well.
Or they did when I went there.
Yeah. And, it's a great place to drink a beer. We often talk about Flying Saucer because that's what we hit a lot.
Yeah.
But the Gingerman in Fort Worth is a nice bar as well.
The Gingerman has grown on me.
Yeah.
It really has. I didn't like it at first. I think I was comparing it to the Saucer too much.
It's own
not.
class.
Yeah, it's not better or worse. It's just not the Saucer.
It's different.
Yeah.
And we don't go as much because my wife is very against smokiness, and often that bar can be a little more smoky than the Saucer. You find that a lot at the just like the Saucer, we end up in only certain areas there because we got to stay away from the smoke because Megan will start fake coughing on everybody, and you don't. You definitely don't want to be fake coughed on. I mean, it's one thing to be coughed on. Think she's got the black lung. But that's different. I mean, I noticed like a little bit of like an almost sour note in the nose.
There is a little bit, and
I don't know if that's a bad or a good thing.
Well, I'm expecting that that's pretty normal because there's a lot of natural yeast in apples, and what they're doing here is probably exclusively apples because true cider is generally around 5%.
Very clear.
And it's made only with apples. Yeah, it's crystal clear. And it's made only with pressed apples. There's not going to be any adjuncts in here, no extra sugar or maple or honey or anything like that. And this is one thing I was really having a hard time with, but I think I found the answer. I'm sure I'll be told if I'm wrong. But it's my understanding that technically a true cider is only apples and has about 5% alcohol by volume. And if it's between 8 and 14%, it's technically wine. Because I was trying to figure out the difference between cider and wine, because cider is an alcoholic beverage made from a fruit, and wine is an alcoholic beverage made from a fruit. But it's that boost in the alcohol content, I think.
And that's why a lot of homebrewers will make what they call an apfel or an apple wine.
Right.
And that's very common. You see a lot of brewers will make those. In fact, somebody involved with our show has sent us in an apple wine to try. We tried.
Oh, nice.
You remember back in California, Dave's friend?
I do remember, yeah.
We tried that apple wine.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Incredibly dry drink. It was almost... I mean, it's amazing the difference to this. I mean, it was easily double the alcohol content and just kick you right in the face. And you can tell why homebrewers get into something like that. We generally try to push the envelope on alcohol content. So.
You'll enjoy on a Sunday afternoon during the summer.
That's not bad.
No, I'm really enjoying it.
I mean, I compare this to like if I'm at a fancy party and somebody's like, "Oh, would you like the Chardonnay?" and they don't really have so I call it a fancy party, but they don't necessarily have a fancy bar, right? You get the Sutter Home versions of Zinfandels, and you get the Miller Lite on draft, right? And you get those kind of things. If they had this as an option, boom, number one. I mean, it's a light beer, a light drink. It's a fruity drink, but it's actually flavorful,
Yeah,
it's good.
It's very enjoyable. I'm digging it. So let's talk a little bit. We talked in the past about judging beers. So we mentioned we talked about this at the beginning of the show. Let's take a look at the cider judging score sheet.
Okay.
That was presented. I forget where we got this. I believe it was called a website called Taco Flavored Kisses. Which I'm not
you
really.
Should be able to get this off of BJCP.
Yeah,
too.
I'm sure this.
BJCP has a cider score sheet as well.
They do, but it's arranged slightly differently. So here I think
we're going to
find.
Mentions BJCP on there.
Okay. I think that we're gonna see a lot of differences in some of these descriptor definitions. For instance, aftertaste is that one of the ones that's on the beer?
Aftertaste is not mentioned on beer at all. So I see this one in flavor, aftertaste is qualified for 5 of the 50 points.
Yeah, so that's actually a really big part of judging cider is the aftertaste.
And I would call this
a fantastic aftertaste.
I would call this aftertaste slightly dry.
Yeah.
It's a tiny bit astringent, but overall on the sweet side.
Yeah, and he talks about astringency, which is also here in the descriptor definition. It is a drying sensation in the mouth, similar to chewing on a tea bag.
Which he has a lot of experience.
Yeah, a lot of experience. So, hot, metallic, moldy. Moldy is that's not a beer definition, I don't think.
Yeah, moldy would be.
I'm guessing that moldy is a flaw in cider.
Sulfury is something you have in beer.
Here's something: New England style cider, a strong cider that's greater than 8% alcohol, made following traditional methods. That is a New England, and that is actually a style. We always talk about the different styles of beer judging, and in I'm gonna have to grab my.
All right, while you're doing that, I'm just gonna mention that I read the sulfury definition, and often when I'm reading things, my ADD does not allow me to read all the way through something. I go ahead, my brain fills in the gaps of what I'm reading, and what I thought I read was smells like burnt mustaches, but actually smells like burnt matches is what it was going for. Not burnt mustaches.
The ADD definitely getting in the way there. So we always talk about the different styles in BJCP judging, and cider judging is no different. So let's look at the 4 styles. These are 4 base styles for cider.
Okay.
And there are a lot of sub styles and like offshoot styles that not everybody recognizes. But these are the 4 basic styles. You have still cider, and still is just like it sounds. It's not carbonated. It's not effervescent. This is slightly effervescent.
It's carbonated.
Yeah,
So
it's very slightly
beyond that
carbonated,
style.
and it's under 7% by alcohol, under 7% alcohol, and it can be dry or sweet.
Okay.
You have sparkling, which is kind of the opposite of still. It's effervescent.
So basically,
I'm
it sounds.
guessing this is sparkling cider.
From what I'm looking at here, though, it's basically saying us that still and sparkling, exactly the same guidelines, except one has carbonation and one does not.
That's exactly what it sounds like.
So.
And then New England style, which I just mentioned when we were looking at the score sheet. New England style is still or sparkling between 8 and 14% alcohol, which, as we said earlier, technically makes it a wine. And it can be made with adjuncts, such as sugars, molasses, or raisins. And you're going to be adding sugar, molasses, and raisins and whatever else to be boosting that alcohol, because you're not going to get 8 to 14% alcohol strictly out of your apples. So, and here's one really neat stipulation. For New England style cider, you can only use wild yeast or wine yeast.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, because about the only thing that's going to ferment that all the way down are going to be those two.
Right.
Because a beer yeast simply just won't get to 14% alcohol.
Oh, yeah, it's not going to do it.
And a lot of times they won't survive in that much alcohol. They'll attenuate so much and then die.
You want to talk about specialty cider while I go grab us some beer, some more cider?
He's going to grab us, and you notice how we always end up saying beer, even though we're drinking a cider.
Yeah, exactly.
We keep Freudian slipping back to beer because that's our thing. We do beer, right? So we're kind of venturing out here, but we like what Crispin's doing with some of their beer and cider type mixes. But a specialty cider, it has adjuncts, right? So it's allowed to be. Something that you can put in there other than what was in the other one, which was just, sugars, molasses, or raisins. So you could put something like prunes in there, pears, maybe mix something up in there that's of a similar style or go somewhere different.
You could even use honey, which is what is in this next Crispin that we're about to pour.
Very nice, yeah.
This is the Crispin Artisanal Reserve Honey Crisp.
Honey is common in a lot of beers.
A lot of beers. Honey's a really good way to boost your alcohol content without killing your flavor.
And in beer, it allows you a lot of range because you can try honey in a beer, put it in early boil, you're going to take away most of the flavors. Put it in late boil, you're going to keep some of the flavors. Put it in the secondary, you're going to keep a lot of the flavor. So you can put it in different spots and have a really good and different style of flavor. I know there's an Australian beer that the Honey Brown that's pretty decent.
Try this. This is a really, really neat change from the last one. Yeah.
Okay, so when I'm smelling this,
the honey definitely kicks through.
The honey comes through. I also notice a major difference in the yeast and almost what I would call a Belgian character. Is this supposed to be ice in there as well?
Yeah, it says it wants you to serve all of them are ice, but...
All right. Here's the bottle. It says smooth over ice.
Smooth over ice.
Okay.
You're
as
I don't know what
the
yeast
Romans do.
I don't know what yeast they used for this one.
It definitely smells Belgian, man. I mean, I've got some of those notes that come along with a Belgian yeast, something that's almost farmhousey character.
I'm guessing they're using some kind of wild yeast on this because they've got a Belgian yeast.
Wow.
They've got a Belgian yeast cider, and that's the one we're going to have
next. That is very smooth. This
is a really, really neat beer. It's got a very crisp finish.
And it's even better as a cider than a beer.
Even better as a cider.
Crispin, their original cider is good. I would drink this. I mean, the Crispin is not my flavor, but this is something I could see myself ordering.
These are going to get better as we go.
I hope so. Because if they get better than this, then I'm happy.
Yes. You're going to be happy because the third one we're drinking is amazing. I
that is very good, and this is I notice it's sparkling. It's definitely carbonated.
Yeah.
This one is much drier. The honey comes out. It's pretty much the only sweetness I get is from the honey.
Oh yeah.
So the honey flavor comes out and it's really big, but it's got undertones of that sweetness from apples. I mean, I can see why people drink ciders when you can get to concoctions like this. I mean, this is really good.
Yeah. I'm liking it.
It's a lot like beers with most people. When they're first trying beers, the only beers that they know and they understand are your, Miller, Budweiser, Coors, those kind of beers that they all taste fairly similar, very bland and as light of flavor as possible. But then they try a flavorful beer and they go, "Oh,
this is what beer is supposed to taste like."
I kind of feel like I'm getting that.
Yeah, and I kind of had that exact same experience the first time my wife brought home a Crispin. I was like, "Oh, that's cute." She can drink cider and I can drink beer, and then she poured me a little taster, and I was really kind of blown away. I was thoroughly impressed, and that's really been the impetus behind this episode.
She poured you a half a scotch.
She did pour me a half a scotch.
As my wife's grandmother often says.
Yeah.
Take a half a scotch.
Just a half a scotch. So, as we mentioned earlier, apple cider, hard cider, used to be the drink of choice in America, and really pretty much anywhere that the Brits colonized. In fact, President William Harrison, a lot of times people running for president or vice president, they try to associate themselves with lower classes in America or the middle class. For instance, they might throw something out there like Joel Sixpack, right? The 1840s version of Joel Sixpack was log cabins and hard cider.
Where are you trying to go with that accent, by the way?
Joel Sixpack?
Yeah.
I'm trying to go Sarah Palin.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because you kind of crested maybe Indiana, Illinois, almost up into Wisconsin, but you got nowhere near.
Those people are all the same.
You got nowhere near Alaska.
Anyone north of the Mason-Dixon line, they're all the same.
All you Yanks.
So the 1840s version of Joel Sixpack was in fact log cabins and hard cider. William Harrison tried to identify himself with hard cider so that he could.
And that's the running back that
is
played
the running
for
back
Cleveland this year, but got
Cleveland.
traded to Pittsburgh.
And then his campaign actually ended up becoming called the Cider Campaign because he gave away free cider at the polls. He had people just hang out outside the polls with barrels of cider and
these
give them to
days,
people going in.
That's what's referred to as illegal. Although I can't say it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It's, I think if I ever run for anything, Dogleg Brewery is going to have a keg out in front of the polling place. I'm not going to say you can have it if you vote for me, but we're going to have, Dogleg Brewery loves me some LaPointe,
A chicken in every pot and beer in every mug. That's what I stand for.
So I think that's a good way to do it.
I mean, it's a fantastic.
If you're going to buy a vote, buy it through somebody's stomach.
Apparently worked because he won a term.
He did.
Didn't he kick it shortly after though? Wasn't Harrison one of the ones that kicked it in office? Was he assassinated, or did he get sick or something? I think he drank too much cider. I don't have.
He drank too much unfermented cider.
He drank too much no such thing.
That can't happen. We've been informed from our studio audience that it is impossible to drink too much cider.
Cider is good for you, and so again, cider really big back in the 1800s. It slowly declined. Starting around the time Harrison ran, it started to decline in favor.
Haven't you ever noticed when the old guy joins the thing, like, "Hey, I love cider"?
All the kids are like, "That's not cool. Not cool."
Harrison's drinking cider.
They're like slowly pushing the glasses away and walking away from the table. So cider started having a very long, slow decline to the point where it wasn't enjoyed at all. I mean, it's the only alcoholic industry that never truly rebounded after Prohibition. Beer rebounded in a big way. All liquors rebounded in a big way.
So I wonder how the cider and the wheat beer phases kind of came together. That's something maybe we should look into.
That is something we should investigate more thoroughly.
Prior to Prohibition, just prior to, the most commonly imbibed alcoholic beverage was wheat beer. Was basically an American's version of Hefeweizen.
Yeah.
And so that was the most commonly drank beer, often because it's low in alcohol, it's semi-sweet, probably a lot like Crispin's base recipe here is. And so you can see why that could eclipse the apple cider, because apple cider would be much more seasonal, whereas you could store grains and make the wheat beer all year long.
Yeah, that's true too. So definitely something to look into.
Yeah.
But despite cider getting almost completely killed by Prohibition,
We do look so cool with our shirts on. You see
it looks
that?
completely lame. Dude. We could switch sides of the camera, nobody would know. We would have to draw a mustache on here. Cider sales have rebounded in a huge way over the last decade or so. In fact, I guess a little bit more than a decade ago, in 1995, cider sales almost tripled in a single year. And since then, they've been steadily doubling every year in the United States.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, I mean that's an absolutely massive increase.
No kidding.
And so you're seeing, actually, when you go to the store, a lot of the cider brands you're going to see are English, because, as we mentioned earlier, the English love this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
English and Canadians, I mean, they love their cider, and they're all enjoying huge profits.
I think he threw the Canadians in there just to make me feel better.
No, it's really, and the Aussies.
Yeah.
The Brits, Canadians, Aussies, they love them some cider. So here in just a minute, we're going to go grab the last tasting of the night. But let's talk about some of the differences. We always talk about beer and brewing.
Right, we do.
Tonight we're going to talk about cider and cider making. Let's look at some of the differences in making cider and brewing beer.
So we've already briefly talked about some of the things that are the same. One of the things that's the same is you ferment it.
Yeah.
It's a sugar that you ferment. And what we do with beer is we make a sugar, and then we ferment that sugar. And so in this, the difference a lot with what's going on with apples, the sugar's already there. So you've just got to get the sugar out of an apple. And everybody knows, if they've ever eaten an apple versus if they've eaten a grain, getting the sugar out of an apple is much, much simpler.
Oh yeah.
And so what you'll be able to do is just pulverize that apple, juice the apple. There's differences in how people filter it, but that's all you got to do. You just got to squeeze that apple, get the juice out, and you have something you can ferment. Just like a grape, you have something you can ferment. And originally, all of this was wild fermentation. So just like with the grapes that people, with the yeast that stays on the husks or shells or whatever you want to call it, the grapes, skins, I guess would actually be the real word. I'll let you talk for a second.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt Kyle to talk a little bit about the last Crispin cider we're tasting tonight, and it's called the Saint. This is a natural hard apple cider that has organic maple syrup added. Remember earlier we talked about adjuncts to increase the alcohol volume. And this is actually fermented with Belgian Trappist yeast.
Belgian Trappist yeast. So they've introduced a different kind of yeast than what is normally in here. I'm very much looking forward to this. Pass this on to you guys, our studio audience.
Immediately when you smell the cider, you can smell that Belgian character just pouring out of there.
I thought I smelled a little barnyard and Belgian.
This one leaves no question.
No. It's there in this. I mean, it's just coming out in leaps and bounds. I mean, you just stick your nose in the glass, and I'm glad we chose the stemware tonight. We had talked about whether we end up with.
This is huge.
Yeah, it's often we talk about the right kind of glass for the right kind of beer. Definitely with cider, don't be afraid to do a stemware. I mean, because it brings out the nose of what you're drinking, and if the nose is bad, and the cider's bad.
Yeah, really, the nose has been so important in everything that we've been tasting tonight, and each one of these drinks, the nose and the palate have really complement each other very nicely.
Very sugary.
It's very sugary. It's extraordinarily unique.
That comes out. It tastes like a really dark sugar or like a candy sugar, like you would put in like a Belgian.
The maple syrup that you're getting coming through.
And it tastes like something that you would add into a Belgian double or a triple or excuse me, a double or a quadruple, something that's really dark and sugary. Although this doesn't look dark and sugary like a beer would.
No, but it has a dark sugary flavor to it. It does, which is really astounding.
Yeah, it's not what you would think from looking at this glass. Like you're going to get a big, dark, robust flavor profile, but you do. You definitely get that.
Yeah, and the Belgian yeast adds a really neat character to a cider that's already pretty neat without it.
Hey guys, give us the name of the tasting you're doing right now. What is this last one?
This is the Crispin
I'll go.
Artisanal Reserve.
And it's actually called the Saint.
The
It's
Saint.
a name. I'll go ahead and show you the.
Which is American for El Santo.
Yeah, that's right. It's American for El Santo.
First discovered by the Germans hundreds of years ago.
So, all I got to say about these two artisanal reserves that we've had tonight are that's just fantastic. I love what they're doing with this. The fact that they're actually taking some experimental nature with the apple wines or ciders or whatever you want to call it. That's good stuff.
It really absolutely is. And Crispin has been. We've mentioned this on previous shows that Crispin has been referred to as the Dogfish Head of cider. And
which is a tough moniker to be applied to
really,
your brand.
That's a really serious responsibility.
But I'll tell you this right now.
If you want to take that on.
I've been with a lot of people. I've been with a lot of girls. I've been with a lot of guys too. Sorry for those of you who watch Waterboy. No, I've been with a lot of people who've ordered ciders out there, and ciders, have never been my flavor. I've always tried. I'm like, oh no, this one's better.
I like give Strongbow. It to me. I've always been partial.
Never had a problem with Strongbow, but I never wanted to order another one. It was Strongbow.
I enjoyed it.
Huh, you have it back.
Interestingly enough, the last time I went to Ireland, I had just acquired a taste for Strongbow before I left, and I couldn't find any Strongbow in Ireland. It was very, very odd, and I found out after I got home that Strongbow was actually named after a guy named Richard de Clare, who made his name by slaughtering Irish. So that's a bigger part of the reason that. For
some
instance,
reason,
it's kind of along
like
the same.
When you kill everybody in their country.
It's kind of along the same lines of naming a beer here Osama.
Yeah.
So.
Oh man, I love me some Osama.
I can't. Tastiest. They don't have any Osama ale in America. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, you did step off there. That's nice.
You like that?
Osama ale. I think we should definitely make a really bitter beer named that. Our IPA is going to be Osama Ale. It's already named.
That's
where it is.
Named.
It is there.
So what did we learn tonight?
We learned that I actually can drink cider. That's something we learned. Something I never knew. We learned some of the differences in brewing techniques. That's something we didn't actually finish disclosing.
Oh yeah, let's go back and finish up the brewing, because there are some more important differences. We talked about the differences in extracting sugar. You don't have to extract sugar from cider. It's already there.
It's there. It's ready for you.
But we always talk about the mashing process on this show and how that extracts the sugar out of the grain, and that's just not necessary with cider.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next step in brewing is, of course, boiling.
Yeah, and in ciders, you don't boil, because that can increase the pectin content, and it changes the flavor, and some of the sugars become non-fermentable. It's something basically you don't want to do.
It makes your cider very hazy.
Yeah.
Pectin is one of the big things that helps make jams and jellies, and that thickness just doesn't ferment out, so it leaves your cider very hazy.
It takes what is already a simple sugar and makes it complex. It basically kills the ability of the yeast to eat that sugar, and you don't want that. Not in a cider.
Certainly not. And then fermentation.
And I'm not sure on the fermentation. I mean, typically, from what I've known, most ciders ferment at ale temperatures. Okay, so
one big difference I did find out while doing show research is that a lot of cider makers will not use any store-bought yeast at all. They'll just, for instance, if you wanted to make this Crispin, this base style, you would probably just press apples into a carboy and just leave them there.
And so you would take a particular style, a Granny Smith, or this or that.
Or you might mix styles.
Yeah,
you might use a pound of Honey Crisp and 5 pounds of Red Delicious and a pound of Granny Smith and see what comes out. But yeah, and apples have their...
For those of you who don't know, Red Delicious was my nickname in college.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. I don't know why. It may not have been.
It's very odd. That might be my name after I turn maroon.
For those of you who don't know, Bono has a lot of Aggie friends. And if he doesn't, he makes them.
I just love that. They're such fine human beings.
Yeah, he knows the secret handshake now.
So add that to what we learned tonight. We learned that Bono is an Aggie,
he knows the secret Aggie handshake.
and we learned how to brew cider.
They put their rings together.
So,
Aggie Bono in form of Puerto Rican.
Activate!
What are we tasting
Next week, we're going to be tasting Coop Native Amber.
Coop Native
Coop-
Amber.
Coop
Coop.
is an
I'm
oak-
excited.
Yeah, you should be. Coop is an Oklahoma brewery and a very, very good brewery.
Yes.
We've both had plenty of chances to enjoy their beers during football trips or whatever other kind of trips to Oklahoma. They make very good beer up there in Oklahoma. So if you have,
I compare them to Franconia around here. They make fantastic beers, small, a real small operation, but they do just a fantastic job with what they make. And when I say small operation, I just mean manpower wise, because they can produce a lot of beer.
They produce a lot of beer.
Yeah.
So Coop is going to be, and that's actually going to be season finale. So make sure to tune in next week with some Coop and be ready for a season finale. And until then, just please keep in mind that we are not professionals.
So please try this at home.
Oh, God, that is awful.